in the everlasting stream of jubilating gesticulations of global politics, where narratives are spun with the fervor of an impassioned orator and power dynamics dance in the shadows, Hasanabi's assertion that America might be worse than North Korea unveils a provocative discourse.
Funnier than like Americans being like, dude, that's the leader of DPRK, leader of North Korea. He's like a gruesome dictator, which is true. Like, obviously, their governing structure is pretty brutal overall, but like, these can't do in comparison to the numbers on the board that American leadership puts up on a daily basis. Like, they just don't have the weapons, they don't have the influence, they don't have the dominance. Sure, he'll dominate his own people, but like, think about like every human life being the same, right? Every human life is worthy. Like, how many kills does he have in comparison to like any American president? Like, he could kill everyone in North Korea tomorrow and then force the people that were the executioners to kill themselves, and it would barely scratch the surface of like one 4-year presidency in terms of like people killed. Wrong question. How many would he have with US weapons? But like, no, that's not the wrong question. That's a hypothetical that just simply does not exist on this planet. And in the hypothetical, you're just like, this is the same principle behind like Hamas. If they had Israel's weapons, like, think about what they would do to Israel. It's like, yeah, bro, there would be no apartheid if Hamas had the same level of weapons as Israel. Okay, that's the point. There would be no Hamas if they had that level of. They would have sovereignty. They would have a standing military. There would be no conflict to begin with. There would be no Hamas to begin with. Same goes for North Korea as well. Like, if North Korea had America-style weapons, they would not be North Korea. They would just be Korea, okay? And who knows how they would operate? Who knows how they would be? Like, that's a fool's take? I don't think that's a fool's take at all. I think everybody always assumes that, like, our enemies would be just as ruthless and just as violent as us, like, in perpetuity. And maybe they would. Maybe. You know? Maybe they would. Noah-san, you, sir, are a fool with a fool's take. Bro, you need to chill with that take, man. Hold up. Either way, it's not falsifiable. Exactly. And a lot of people refuse to acknowledge that. A lot of people refuse to acknowledge that and just go, no, you don't understand. Like, they would be just as bad, if not so much worse. Like, yeah, if they were just like America, then they would be bad. They would be significantly worse as far as like what they're doing now. But history is riddled. You chose Jubilee over Kendrick yesterday, nerd. No, man, you think I didn't want to watch? I've got friends who think the president isn't responsible for the deaths in Palestine. That every American president has more bodies in DPRK. China, Russia take doesn't fly. Wait, what do you mean it doesn't fly? It doesn't matter if whether they consider it to be correct or not. Doesn't change the reality. Like, every president that has continued to implement a global sanctions regime on countries that are outside of the sphere of influence of the United States of America is responsible for the deaths that accompany such severe, crippling sanctions in said nations. Like, those deaths are on every American politician right off the bat. That's where the big numbers are too. Having said that, though, like I say, he's not like a good dude. This is still a monarchy functionally, a theocratic monarchy functionally. You know, not exactly great. I also forgot to run the top of the hour ad break after that chatter me up, so I'm running it now. What's the religion? It's just some made up. It's not like officially a religion, but it's more like, it's kind of like a religion. A theocratic monarchy, really? Come on, bro. Like, oh no, the people just happen to love this dynasty, and that's why they keep voting for it. Here's a quick breakdown, TikTok breakdown on the Korean War. Yeah, here.
Because there's a man mad in my comments saying, I don't.
The perennial comparison between American leadership and the authoritarian regime of North Korea's leader, often depicted as a gruesome dictator, opens a Pandora's box of ethical quandaries and historical introspection. The juxtaposition of the two nations' leaders invites a deeper examination of the true cost of dominance and the relative value of human life under different political regimes. The American presidency, with its global reach and military prowess, exerts an influence far beyond its borders, a leviathan in the international arena. The argument posits that the sheer scale of American military interventions, economic sanctions, and covert operations results in a staggering toll on human life. This broad and unrelenting reach makes the numbers put up by American leadership dwarf those of the North Korean regime, whose brutality, while severe, remains largely confined within its borders. The implicit argument here is a haunting indictment of the scale of suffering meted out under the guise of geopolitical strategy and national security. Hasanabi's discourse invites us to adopt a perspective where every human life holds equal intrinsic value. In this light, the calculus of death and suffering inflicted by American policies becomes a sobering reality. The hypothetical scenario wherein North Korea possesses the same level of weaponry and influence as the United States further amplifies this discussion. It suggests that the inherent violence of statecraft is not a monopoly of any single nation but a byproduct of power itself. The question then morphs from a comparison of brutality to an examination of the structures and scales of power that enable such violence. To delve into this comparison, one must consider the historical context and the evolution of American foreign policy. From the covert operations during the Cold War to the more overt military interventions in the Middle East, American presidents have sanctioned actions leading to massive casualties and long-term destabilization of regions. These actions, often justified under the banner of freedom and democracy, reveal a dissonance between stated ideals and the grim realities on the ground. This dissonance underscores Hasanabi's assertion, highlighting a moral paradox at the heart of American foreign policy. The argument extends to the realm of economic sanctions, a tool often wielded by American leadership to exert pressure on nations outside its sphere of influence. These sanctions, while less overtly violent than military action, nonetheless inflict severe human suffering. They cripple economies, starve populations, and create humanitarian crises that echo through generations. The deaths resulting from such policies are a stark testament to the unseen, yet profound, impact of American global dominance. This adds another layer to the comparison, positioning economic warfare alongside military intervention as instruments of large-scale suffering. Moreover, the discussion broaches the subject of perception and narrative control. The depiction of North Korean leadership as monstrous is a familiar refrain in Western media, yet this portrayal often overlooks the broader context of global power struggles. Hasanabi's critique suggests that such narratives serve to obscure the equally, if not more, significant atrocities committed under the aegis of American leadership. This selective moral outrage, he contends, is a mechanism to deflect scrutiny from the actions of the powerful and maintain a veneer of moral superiority. The hypothetical discourse around North Korea possessing America's arsenal further challenges the assumptions about violence and statecraft. It posits that the nature of a regime's actions is intrinsically linked to its capacity for violence and control. If North Korea were as militarily and economically powerful as the United States, it might not be the hermit kingdom it is today but a formidable global player with its own set of imperialistic tendencies. This hypothetical serves to highlight that the potential for brutality is not unique to any one regime but is inherent in the structures of power and dominance. Critics might argue that this comparison is inherently flawed, given the different political systems and historical trajectories of the two nations. However, Hasanabi's point is not to equate the regimes directly but to provoke a re-evaluation of the moral high ground often claimed by American leadership. By highlighting the disproportionate scale of suffering inflicted by American policies, he calls into question the legitimacy of the moralistic stance often adopted in international discourse. The discourse also touches upon the concept of sovereignty and the right of nations to self-determination. The suggestion that North Korea's actions are a reaction to the overwhelming power of American influence points to a broader critique of imperialism. It argues that the violent resistance of smaller nations is often a desperate bid for autonomy in the face of an insurmountable hegemonic force. This perspective reframes the narrative from one of simple good versus evil to a more nuanced understanding of global power dynamics. In essence, Hasanabi's argument is a call for introspection and a challenge to the conventional narratives that dominate international politics. It urges a recognition of the vast and often invisible suffering inflicted by powerful nations under the guise of global stewardship. This recognition, he argues, is a necessary step towards a more equitable and humane global order. The critique is not just of specific policies or leaders but of the very structures that enable such vast disparities in power and the resultant human cost. Ultimately, the comparison between American leadership and North Korea serves as a provocative lens through which to examine the broader implications of global power and dominance. It challenges us to rethink the moral frameworks within which we operate and to acknowledge the pervasive and often hidden violence that underpins the current world order. In doing so, it calls for a more honest and critical engagement with the realities of international politics and the true cost of maintaining global hegemony.